You'd be amazed how far I'm prepared to come for a free meal. The answer is the weather sucked yesterday. I was so disappointed. But anyway, oh, Kieran, the music. I really liked the music to start with, actually. I thought it was quite soulful as we went through. Okay, I got a task which was to sort of try and set a scene, which was, what unsettles you more? The cyber threat or global uncertainty? So I ask the question of you, the audience, just stick up your hands. Who thinks it's the cyber threat which unsettles you more? And I assume, therefore, the rest of you, the majority here by a margin, would go with global uncertainty. Is that correct? Well, the truth of the matter is, you're all half right. It's both. The two are absolutely interlinked. And if you separate them and somehow see them as different problems, you misunderstand the challenge and the level of the threat you face. Now, when I shared the panel 2 years ago or so with David, I started off by making an observation, said that if you find yourself in a minefield, what do? Has anybody found themselves in a minefield here? Interestingly, in the last audience, there was one lady who had. I've had the good fortune or the misfortune to find myself in a couple in my life. The first thing you do is stop. And then you communicate to the people around you to give it the old don't move. You then try and define the problem. You work out the choices you have, communicate that to the people, and then cautiously, very cautiously, move out. And the same applies here to the problems you're facing. Most of us don't stop. This isn't a conference. Everybody here is either responsible, engaged in a series of defensive measures against attacks that are facing you as an individual, your company, or the country, Jersey, the Channel Islands. This isn't a conference. This is an inflection point. If you don't see the level of the challenge and the threat you face, you will just make a series of errors. I have 3 things in common with Sir Jim Radcliffe. One of them, unfortunately, isn't money, because he's richer than hell and I'm not. But the 3 things we have in common is we're both knights of the realm. We're both in our 70s, and we both believe in his pat phrase, which is, don't do dumb shit. And yet, that is the recurring theme. That's the recurring theme. The last presentation with Warren was really interesting. You just saw how easy, I get COVID operation, COVID entry, and all that side of life. I've robbed banks, done all sorts of stuff officially robbed banks in my time. I know exactly how easy it is to just front, get access to, and walk out with your server, walk out with your payroll, walk out with your data, whatever the case may be. We're just incredibly, just lost. We somehow think that, it's not really a big problem. Well, it's tomorrow's problem. I did something yesterday or last week or last month. We've got a really good system. All is well. All is not well. All is absolutely not well. And why do I say that? It goes back to the challenge I set, which is on the one hand, the cyber threat, and the second is global uncertainty. The latter frames the former. Global uncertainty is the conditions in which the former now, in fact, grips your business, you as an individual, you, the Channel Islands, whatever the case may be, and steals your secrets, takes your money, crashes your systems. And that global uncertainty is very visceral. You'd assume that I'd be turning around and saying, right, okay, well, what's the obvious? Well, it's Ukraine and it's Gaza. These tragedies which are taking place are generational for the people that are involved, the people you know, or in fact their impact. But they will pass. What won't pass? Well, there's a shift in global power. The world's already changed, and most of us can't see it or recognize it. The East, the West, and the rest. Let's start and look at the West. Yeah, we have this sort of comfort. Going back to, I don't know, the Westphalian Pact of 1648 or wherever it was. History written from that period of time. And a sense of dominance, a sense of authority, a sense of setting the conditions which everyone else follows. They used to. They don't so. And so therefore our operating structure, our MS-DOS, whatever you want to call it, has already shifted from here to here. We're slightly rudderless, if you want to try and capture whatever the West is. It's a really bad term because it's not really the West, but you look at Europe, you look at sort of what I call America and the like, the Big Five, all that. We're slightly rudderless. We're just consumed and drawn into, in many ways, the interests of the individual, rather than recognizing it's the collective that matters. And in that collective, it's about values and about principles. So we're not in good shape. And we've gone through, the superpowers coming up, one superpower up to the 1990s. That superpower, no longer quite so super. No longer quite so dominant. Sure, it's massive. The United States, huge nuclear arsenal, great armed forces and all the rest of you. But is it that dominant force in the world? And the answer is no, because there's a new East. You had the great classic sort of 2001 axis of evil and all that. Yeah, actually, a far better term is Niall Ferguson's one when he talks about an axis of ill will. Russia, North Korea, Iran, China. Three of those are quite rogue. Russia, North Korea, Iran. China, really important part of the global commercial space. Highly competitive, aggressively competitive. The enemy, not so sure. But I remember somebody once saying, You know, we can't solve the problems of the world without China, but they will never play by our rules. So they don't. Why would they? Why should you? They're not the West, they're not us. And so if you leave yourself open to having your IP scraped, your data taken, your commercial successes transferred, fill your boots. Of course they'll do that. Why wouldn't they? If I was in their shoes, I would. And then there's the rest. No one really paid attention in 2009 when BRICS was set up. You know, I think Putin put it on the map, headquartered in Shanghai. What was it? South Africa, Russia, China, India. That little group of countries, yeah. Now, whoa, half the world's population, a third of the GDP. Yeah, big deal. India in that group, more UAE and others. You talk about influence, you talk about a shift in power. Yeah, something we all took for granted and we just have forgotten about in the West. The answer is these jeweler scales are absolutely shifting out here. And they're either inclined or they're aligned. For them, what matters is old Palmerston's great comment once said, you know, we have no eternal allies. We have no perpetual enemies. Our interests are eternal and perpetual. So these countries, therefore, independently and individually, look at and take a judgment as to where they wish to be inclined or stand, not West or East or communist or, in fact, what I call democracy or whatever the case may be, but based upon their own interests. And those interests really matter. That shift in power needs to be recognized and understood. And if you don't recognize it, you don't understand it, and you don't realize, in fact, how, therefore, this framing has changed. And as I said, 3 of those nations in the axis of ill will are not your friend. Absolutely not your friend. And they'll go from one end of the spectrum, which is merely, in fact, what I call to get into your systems, into your companies, into you as individuals. You're, at the end of the day, high worth, all the rest, family offices. To the other end, well, they'll burn you to the ground. They'll wreck you in a heartbeat because disorder and disruption, in fact, is a good outcome. Jeweler's scales. So that's the circumstances of your global uncertainty. The comfort, the complacency, which we've all enjoyed, you've all enjoyed, this last, few centuries, suddenly changing. Now, is that a major drama? I don't think it is. It's just a reality. So I said this is not a conference. This is about a wake-up call. This is about actually, in fact, recognizing it's an inflection point in time and history. And so what you have now is not a balance of power, but you have an imbalance of power that is driving the sort of what I call what we've been used to or what we grew up with or what we're comfortable with or what we keep on defaulting to as being therefore, that's how it was, that's how it is, that's how it will be. It's not how it will be. You know, someone like Thomas Schelling, you know, third of the great sort of what I call game theory boys. You had von Neumann back in the 30s. He made the great comment, don't forget, that once said, all All stable processes we can predict. All unstable processes we can control. 1930s. Then you had Nash in the 50s. Then you had Schelling back in the 90s. They're all dead now. But Schelling talked about two things which really are pertinent to understanding the global space, this global uncertainty. And it was this interesting blend of dynamic instability. That's not dynamic instability by chance, happen chance, or opportunity, although you'll take that if it's given to you. It's dynamic instability by design. And on the other side, not the management of risk, manipulation. Manipulation of risk. These two are the new world state, the norm. Dynamic instability and the manipulation of risk. So rumor, gossip, propaganda, information, social media. What's true, what's not true? Is Donald Trump the father of IVF? Yeah? You say it, you put it out there, becomes fact. But the dynamic instability and the manipulation of risk, because everything is in flux. Politics, financial markets, just keep ticking the list off. Nothing is stable. Nothing is going to be stable. That is global instability. And don't, rush to have the boys at the back there play sort of Leonard Cohen and grab some hemp rope to go and hang yourself. It's just the new reality. Is it the end of the world? Of course it's not. You want to see what a bad year's looked like or a bad century. Read Tupman's book, A Distant Mirror. Barbara's reflection on France in the 15th century tells you how things can really be bad. Yeah? But recognize this instability. Recognize this manipulation of what you see and what you think you see, of what you know and what you think you know, as being something which is by design in order to, in fact, secure an outcome. And so you have this piece sitting here. That frames this just uncomfortable reality, frames the cyber threat. Now let's flick across the cyber threat. Well, here's a fascinating thing. Whoa. I can't ever remember there being greater clarity on the cyber threat than there is today. Yeah? Ken comes up the other day, head of MI5, makes it crystal clear. Yeah? Putin and Russian, it's the shades of Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Oh, head of MI6. So Richard and Burns from the CIA sit down and reinforce that message. The BBC the other day on propaganda. There's absolute clarity in your face by people who spend their entire life with organizations that look with as much as you can put in the high side, the low side, open source, you name it, to turn around and say, what are the threats? And they say, whoa, this is a threat. This is a big threat. This is real, it's today, it's not like coming, it's not if or not when, it's when did it happen? Because you still don't know it's necessarily happened, or you've had a bit of a blip, whatever the case may be. Oh, it's going to be without pause, unrelenting. So you have this sort of situation, you can go, whoa, That clarity, you've all read it, you've seen it, and yet somehow it sort of registers, but doesn't really register. There's never been greater awareness in the boardroom, in the company, amongst the CEO, COO, CFO, CTO, Cisco, you name it, everyone in the business, the workforce, all are told and reinforced with this message. Don't do stupid shit. Don't do dumb shit. So it's there. Again, incredible awareness. There has never been a greater access to effective tools, capabilities to deal with this. You know, look at the billions. I mean, billions upon billions that the big three, Microsoft, AWS, and Google put into trying to protect the cloud, the data. Because brand equity, everything, if they lose it, whoa. Does it matter? Yeah, it does matter. Huge. Massive amount of effort. So these efficiencies, these tools and capabilities, the stuff you're getting from Warren and everybody else that's going to come on today, couldn't be more. Greater access to that. And over the way, there's never been greater opportunity for training and education amongst your own people as to, in fact, don't click, phishing, actually, in fact, the nature of the threat and how to. And yet, we all seem to be stuck on stupid. So it just keeps on. So with all this, you think we should be in great shape. You should be able, whatever your roles are in here, to be able to go back into your company, back into your organization, back into the boardroom, back and turn around and say, hey, wake up, smell the coffee. The world's changed and changing. The threats are increasing and consistent. And oh, by the way, it's not the strongest or the most intelligent species that survives. It's the species that adapts. And the opposition in all its forms, state level. Oh, divested state tools and capabilities to criminal organizations, just angry people. Now, these are very real, very capable, and they are adapting as fast as they can to steal your IP, your business, your money, anything and everything. If you don't match them, trust me, it's like running a marathon. You see the fellow or the gal way out in front, you might as well just leave the stage. That's why I said this is not a conference. This is actually an inflection point, because we've just got so used to this sort of, oh, cyber this, yeah, the threats, yeah, people are stealing that, phishing attacks, heard this report, saw this, saw that, how's AI being used to, in fact, what I call clone people, basically voices, you name it, all the rest. So we hear all this, yeah, and yet, there are people out there are states out there who absolutely want to steal your lunch, eat it, and bury you. And so, if there was ever a time not to just do a bit of sort of what I call, sidebars, social gathering, discussion, that was very interesting, I liked that presentation. If there was ever a time to wake up and recognize the nature of the threat and the challenge we face by the way which can be checked, can be defended against, it's right now. Because if there ever was to use that phrase, a clear and present danger. It's here and now. Now, I'll take any questions on anything you like, as long as it's not gardening. When I die and go to hell, I'm going to be made a gardener.
Any questions for Sir Graeme, ladies and gentlemen? You're not usually reticent in coming forward with questions, so I do hope we have a few.
So,
Andre.
There's a lot of false media going around at the moment, a lot of false news and bits and pieces. It's polarizing a complete generation of individuals. We're seeing an awful lot of this appearing as within the social media platforms, and it's destabilizing our news services, our traditional sources of news. What's your views on that? Have we lost this war?
No, we haven't. As to the generations, what I find really difficult is to take a sort of a view that says, all right, we got it wrong, the next generation are going to get it right, or we got it right and the next generation are getting it wrong as it comes through. My sense is that we haven't been as alert. You know, you take, for instance, 89 when the wall went down. I remember it well. Yeah. The answer is, oh, peace dividend. Yeah? Well, it don't look too peaceful out there right now, does it? And so there's a sense of this information being, oh, right, and then you'll get the inevitable sort of propaganda, misinformation, disinformation. You know, Russia established, you know, a department of disinformation in 1929. They're good at it. Oh, by the way, so are we. So are the Americans. Yeah. Shaping opinion, shaping, influencing, and all the rest here. So it's really difficult to turn around and say, you know, in effect, is this, in fact, a binary answer? Is this, you know, our generation got it wrong, next generation get it right? And oh, by the way, what we have to do is have a conversation between those different cultures, different generations, different responsibilities to try and see if we can align ourselves to a common understanding. That's all we're best to do. You know, if there ever was a case of, you know, the city on a hill, not the shining city upon a hill, because that implies an arrogance, where you look and turn around and say, we agree, broadly speaking, that's what the problem looks like. To define the problem, I think, is really important. Albert Einstein once said, I supposedly was asked the question, if you had 60 minutes to save the world, what would you do? And his answer was informative, insightful. He turned around and said, I'd spend 55 minutes defining the problem and 5 minutes finding a solution. My entire experience of life, I said, I'm in my 70s now. My entire experience of life is that finding people spending 59 minutes trying to define a solution and the last minute blaming everyone else. Minister.
Sorry, here's the microphone. Thank you. I believe there's quite a few people in this room whose job is to help organisations deal with the mindset of people who work here. We're in an island where people are very nice to each other and very courteous. And I believe that certainly in your line of work, you've had to do a lot of leadership, and sometimes telling people isn't quite enough, that we still may well find you've got office workers who are letting people in through doors because they just, you know, sort of are wet flashing passes and that sort of thing. And I just wondered if you yourself have found certain ways of motivating people, getting them to accept a need without actually scaring them to death, and whether you might have some tips here.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. The answer is that you know, I'll go to my grave disappointed in humanity. Yeah, I've just seen the dark side, you know, on a repetitive side. The answer is, long may good manners, kindness, decency prevail. But don't be blinded by that there are black-hearted. It's a bit like, for instance, when they tore the statue down in Bristol the other day of, you know, the old slave trade and all that side of life. You think this was an appalling, a deplorable position for the United Kingdom to have taken, where people made a great deal of money out of, in fact, massive human suffering. But I'd have left the statue up and put a large sign and said, do you realize that today human trafficking is significantly greater than the slaves? That doesn't decry the slave trade. It's to recognize that today under our own roof here in the Channel Islands, in the United Kingdom, this is taking place. You know, there is no shortage of bad actors, black-hearted, bad people. And so I can do it really easily. The answer is keep a foot in both camps. Really important that you don't get, we're all safe, we're all good. I think there's a really interesting challenge, which is the private-public partnership part, because invariably the public, who are often the least informed and less expert, feel they have to be in charge, and the private, who are better informed often and quicker, understand that they're prepared and comfortable with taking risk, as opposed to, in fact, trying to apportion and or defend against blame. The blame bar is really low, risk is a lot higher. And so getting that partnership right requires very strong leadership on the part of the public sector to recognize how helpful the private sector could be, and then the private sector to recognize the challenges and responsibilities of government and the public side. And so there's a relationship there which I'm not sure that I see as perfect, even getting there, but at least understanding it is moving in the right direction to let that bring some sort of return on how you might therefore wrestle with this wicked problem, because it is a wicked problem.
Thank you very much, Sir Graeme. For all that, we're a little island in the middle of the English Channel, literally a pebble in the ocean. Does what we're doing even matter? Does the world care? Can we make any difference here?
Yeah, the answer is it's really easy to sort of what I call think, you know, we're just a little minnow in a big pond. You're not. You're actually quite a big minnow. In fact, you're a lot bigger than a minnow, yeah? In an interconnected world. So the truth is, in fact, that, you know, I could jump into, in fact, what I call, you know, a Formula One racing car. If it hasn't got any wheels, it's not going to go anywhere. Make a load of noise. And so it's the sum of the parts that matter here. And so therefore, in fact, number one is recognize that you are part of a bigger whole. Number two is don't mistake the fact that you see yourself as just this small Channel Islands, yeah, that you're not a target, yeah? You have high worth individuals, you have family offices, you have very effective business, you have large financial institutions, you have history here, you have, in fact, what I call a reach across within the Channel Islands and broader into Europe and beyond, yeah? You are more than a minnow of interest to those who wish to either steal, disrupt, or tear the heart out of whatever you've got because it suits them to have disorder, manipulation of risk.
Further questions? So I do have one, in fact. A couple of years ago, I was reading through some old notes the other day. A couple of years ago, I was at a presentation by one of the assistant directors of the NCSC. And he gave an interesting view Obviously, earlier, Sir Graeme, you were talking about Russia, China, the traditional, or the current obvious threat source. The view of the presenter was, that's fine, but actually focus equally on the nature of the attacks you're seeing, because they're going to be largely similar coming from those names and from everywhere else. What's your view on the balance between where you should look in that respect?
Yeah, I think again, if you turn around, do not underestimate that individually in this room and collectively in this room, you are of interest to nation-level capabilities who want to either access or upset, steal, whatever it may be, some of the data and or in fact what I call the bits you're responsible for. And so the first thing, in my view, is you turn around and say, I remember listening to people saying, oh, right, well, we're in good shape. We'll bespoke our system. You think, no. The answer is go with one of the, start off with how you frame your safety. And that would be the big three, Microsoft, AWS, something like Google. Yeah, because that gives you, because they can't afford to fail. They spend billions of dollars ensuring, therefore, that part of the cloud. Doesn't mean it's absolutely secure and safe, yeah? Quantum encryption, all that side of life coming in and beginning to upset the sort of apple carts there. But you start with one of those three. Then you turn around and say, right, now we've got the rest. Because we're only a small company in this, you say, no, that's still not enough. Because you've got a day job, you've got people to manage, you've got problems coming. The truth of the matter is you need something in between that is able to, in fact, get a 24/7, 365 view of your business and where it sits in that silo of competencies, whether it's finance, whether it's marketing, whether it's, in fact, what I call, moving sort of DHL, whatever, that is looking across the entire global space, and in particular, to understand what the emerging and the new threats are, and therefore able to identify them, either patch and or, in fact, ensure that they're watching, so when something happens, you're not unsighted. You need the unblinking eye of Mordor to be able to have that, and you, as a CTO, CISO, whatever the case may be, you as a company can't do it. And so you need to have this sort of other, and they're all here today. You can see them. I work with ITC and the like, yeah. And you might think, oh, well, we can't really afford it. My view is you can't afford not to. Understand that importance of what's happening out there, what is the new and emerging threats and the seams that are being taken, and the like. And then you need to have this education, this training, because you can't stop people clicking, downloading, just being human and doing dumb shit.
Final opportunity for any more questions for Sir Graeme. It's been an absolute delight to have you over. It was fantastic to spend some time with you, Mark, and Paul last night as well. Thank you so much for coming. Sir Graeme Lamb.